This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. My guest today is Bill Letson. Bill, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Heather. Thanks for inviting me. This is quite an honor.
Oh, it's great to have you here. You have a very interesting near-death experience. So if you want to take us to just before your near-death experience and then kind of lead us right into it.
Okay, yeah. A little history was I was 38 years old at the time. I was a fireman down in Santa Barbara area, worked for Santa Barbara County. I drove a fire engine. I was an engineer was a title. And there was a we used to have flu epidemics. It was, we grew up with that. Every 3 or 4 years, we'd be a lot of people with flu. And we were having one in 94. And it was a good one. And there was a lot of people ill, and we were running on, running calls a lot. And we went to this one lady, and she was really super ill, and we just kind of sprung into action. Everything was wrong with her. All her vital signs, everything was shot. And, we didn't, back in those days, you didn't wear a mask. Nobody ever did, even in the emergency rooms, the nurses and stuff. So, anyway, my job was to get the oxygen on her. So I slid across the bed, and we were moving fast because she was circling the drain. And I got the mask on her, and I was tightening it up. And then she realized she had firemen all around her, and she'd been very fearful. She'd been stuck in her house for a while, and she let out a big gasp, a big sigh of relief. And I was taking a breath in just as she exhaled, and I felt my lungs fill with her breath. And I looked at the medic, and he was kind of like, uh-oh. And I said, man, that's not going to go well. But it didn't. But we got her to the hospital, and she recovered, and that was a save. So that was cool. And so a couple days later, I was off duty. I was on a days off, like a 4-day or something. And about day 2, I got, I was really ill by the next morning, and by day 2, I was really sick, and I was home, and my pulse was like 150, and my blood pressure was, I tried to take a radial pulse at your wrist, and I couldn't get a pulse. So I knew from experience that if you can't get a radial pulse, your blood pressure's below 80 systolic. The top number, which is usually 120 over 80 is a normal blood pressure. Mm-hmm. And so I was looking in the mirror, and I said, man, I'm going downhill fast. Everything was wrong. It was dark, and I was severely dehydrated because I'd been throwing up and going the other way for about 40 hours. So I went to call my family. I called my sister. I got my niece on the phone, and I couldn't talk. It was, I tried to make a sentence, and it was just a whisper. It was that catastrophic. And she knew it was me, and she knew something was wrong. So they hung up, dialed 911, and Santa Barbara County came and picked me up off the living room floor and started some IVs and got me to the hospital. And they put me in a room there, and my wife showed up. She came from work, and it was, it was looking better because I'd gotten a couple of IV bags in me, and the system was starting to come back. And the doctor prescribed this, the place was full. It's full of kids and adults, and everybody was really ill. And so they were trying to get ahead of it. And so they were prescribing, everybody gets the same thing, something for nausea, something for pain. And when the nurse came in, I was like, I think I can get out of here. I'm feeling a lot better. And And she goes, well, you haven't seen a doctor yet, so you can't leave. And so, and these are the orders. And so she pushed it into the port on the IV, and she was kind of in a hurry, and it just flattened my system. I just keeled over. And then my wife, after that, my wife was just telling me that, they Narcaned you 3 times. She wrote it down. She started taking notes because everything went crazy. The
Right.
alarms went off and everybody's running in and say, oh, they killed this young guy, and but yeah, I was out and they put me in the head down thing, and I had a couple of IVs going, and they're trying to get a pressure back. Because, as far as blood pressure and how much fluids I had in the system, I came in there on my knees. And, that it was a Nubane, a synthetic morphine. That knocked me out. It was a knockout punch. And my system did not rebound. It just stayed in this huge vasodilated thing. So the fluid that was in the system was not enough to get good perfusion. So, everything started shutting down. I was, unconscious and gone, and they they couldn't get me back. And I went to up to intensive care, and I hung out there for the night. And during that night, that's when I left my body. So you wanted me to stop there?
Oh, you can go right on into your near-death experience. That's when it happened, correct?
Right.
Right.
So I was, last thing I knew, I was in the emergency room trying to get dressed and get out of there. And then my wife said, your eyes rolled back and you fell straight back on the bed. It was like a joke, comedy act. And so, I was up in intensive care. And at some point during that night, midnight, 1, 2, 3, I don't know. I left my body and I found myself flying through this star-filled realm. And I'm sorry, I always start smiling and laughing and stuff because I just remember how amazing it was.
That's nice.
I was in this place where it's nothing but acceptance and joy and belonging and love. And we come down here into earth and we have these lives, but where we come from is astounding. The feeling and the belonging. I was flying through this star-filled realm, and these stars were all around me. They were different colors and they were different energies, and it was like a welcoming. And as I was parading through them, the first thing I thought was, man, what the heck was that? Meaning my life.
Interesting.
I had a fantastic life. Well, yeah, I have a fantastic life, like a dream life. But on the other side, it was like, dude, that was gnarly. It was hard, the emotions that we're saddled with, the energy that comes in with us in like our birth chart and stuff. Some of those things are, very challenging. And so all those challenges that, those energies that are scripted onto your soul, onto your life, in this life, they're gone. And you're just this incredibly joyful being that is in love with everybody, and everybody's in love with you, and there are no problems. And so that's where we come from. And as I felt like I'd been let out of a hot, dark, stuffy closet, like I'd been stuffed into something, and I couldn't get over it. I kept saying, how in the world did I believe I was this person? It was such an amazing trick that I was convinced I was this guy, and I had this history and this story, and likes and dislikes, because it was absolutely an illusion. It was absolutely not true. And I know that sounds ridiculous from here.
No, it makes sense. It's what a lot of people say.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's, a lot's happened in the last 10 years with this. I have this thing, Kundalini. And so if I sit still, I see these grids around me, around, the whole place is held together. It's like we're in a hologram or a simulation or something. And the whole, your personality and all this history and your DNA and your ancestors and all this stuff, it's all part of the script.
So this kind of opened this up to you, and also explain Kundalini, because a lot of people aren't familiar with that.
Yeah, we're all of us are on these journeys, and the near-death experiencer, the spiritual transformative event, people who suddenly they find themselves on the roof of their bedroom or something. These are all invitations, and if you're ready to take the invitation and take a real look at what you really are, the universe, that's what the universe is waiting for. And so when we do that, and I did that after I retired in 2010, I did those things, and I stayed in Costa Rica in these villages and with shamans and Native Americans, and everything just slowed down. No internet, a lot of silence, and nature just in the natural world all the time. And when you really take a hard look at who you are, and then they'll reward you. They'll say, okay, you took the invitation and you're not screwing around, and you're actually seeking, you're actually looking, not overly so, but just wondering. And the other side likes that. So I did that. I did that for about 4 years. I was going to these a couple of different places and just hanging out and paying attention and dropping all the Western stuff. We got all these answers with religion and science and history and our modern online culture. Every answer is answered, and for somebody who's has a near-death experience or has some experiences, none of those answers work. They're all part of the confusing script, and it's all perfect.
Did this change who you were? Were you a very different person before this experience happened?
The near-death experience, not so much. I just want to get back on the job, and I talked about it for a while, and somebody told me, "Hey, you should stop talking about this because you're a fireman, and you're gonna it's not gonna work." And so I dummied up and zipped it for about 15 years. And in 2010, I retired, and I read the Rick Strassman book with DMT, the spirit molecule, and his volunteers who he was injecting with DMT were having the same experience that I had, and they were seeing the same beings. And I think I got off track on my.
Well, yes, let's go back to those beings, because during your near-death experience, you went into a certain place and you saw some beings. So start there.
Yeah. So just to wrap that up, you asked me about Kundalini, and once you are cooperating with the universe, and you're letting this personality, putting that personality in the back seat for a while, and if you're ready, then this energy comes in. It's not believable, but this energy comes in and it ignites the energy that we all carry on our spine, this Kundalini energy. It's at the bottom of our tailbone, and it lights that up, and it starts moving. And you have, I mean, it takes years and years, but yeah, and it's eventually it moves up and it gets into the crown chakra, and you'll have this experience. I remember it was over about a week where it just reconnects with home, and that feeling of absolute joy and bliss, that's what reconnected, where all of us are just cut off from it. But it's all around us.
I imagine too, when you've had a near-death experience, you're probably constantly trying to seek out things to give you that feeling again because it's so amazing.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. I just wanted to get back to being Bill, and because I had like a mission. I wanted to be this fireman, and I wanted to help others. I really loved that. Firemen are Boy Scouts, so are cops. Hear all this bad news about behavior and stuff, but they're Boy Scouts. They're good guys. And I just wanted to do that. It was very important to me to spend my life helping others, and I got to. And so I hit 55 in 2010. I retired, and then that near-death experience thing. It came roaring back. It was like it was scripted, and that I ended up with that book. I don't read drug books. I don't watch drug videos, and when I got to the chapter 13 and 14, it's Contact Through the Veil, and it talks about these beings that we're going to talk about, and that just floored me. That they was the it was the same description, and this is what anybody who takes DMT and any person will break through and see that we're in this hologram, and we've got these assistants, sort of like we're on an amusement park ride, and they're like the carnies, they're keeping us going. And so you wanted me to get back to the thing.
Right.
Okay.
Back to the near-death experience where you met some of these beings.
Okay. So, I was flying through this star-filled realm, and I was just incredible welcoming. And I felt like I've been let out of a hot, dark closet. And it felt like somebody was pouring honey all over my brain, and it was running down through all my nerves. And it was absolute euphoric bliss. It was like some sort of cosmic orgasm, and it was just sustained. And that's where we come from. That's what we are. It's that wonderful what our existence is away from here. And I kept wondering, how in the heck did I think I was this person? And I was cruising along saying, this is awesome. I could do this forever. And I was seeing all these things like geometry. It was coming up like, the old microfiche. You remember, you go to
Sure.
You go to a library, and then if you spun it really fast, you see all these pages come and go.
Yes.
And it was just like that. They were just coming one after another, this geometry and formulas. And
were you absorbing all that information, or was it just
I knew
passing
it
you
all.
by? You knew it all.
Yeah, it was available, whether I had it in my head or it was part of the universe. But I mean, I tried a couple of subjects, and there were no questions. It was like you understood everything, and you can't bring it back. But yeah, we are these amazing beings. I know that times are tough, and we're all getting scared lately because whatever's happening. But there's nothing to worry about. We're these amazing beings, and we go back to an absolute blissful existence. And you kind of chuckle at what went on here. It's kind of an amusement park. So as I was flying along, and everything was awesome, and I was just absolutely stoked, and then all of a sudden, I landed in a place. That was solid. There were beds there, and there were equipment. There was things hanging from the ceiling, and there was indirect lighting, and it was like a facility or some kind of a clinic or something. And right in front of me, there were these 3 little hooded guys, and they were overjoyed to see me. they were bouncing around and they had big smiles on their face and they were giggling. And I was extremely confused. All of a sudden, I was in this other realm, this other place. And they were saying things like, how was it? What can you tell us? What did you learn? And they were giggling and bouncing around. And I was looking at one after another and trying to get a focus on them. They were in these dark robes with hoods. And one of them came close and he looked me up and down. And then he turned to the other two and he said, he doesn't remember us. And they all started giggling uproariously and bouncing around. And they looked exactly like that movie Communion. And I know most people are, it's like a spooky movie, but it's, if you, and the sound and stuff, a lot of those sounds will entrain us with fear because of the frequency and the music and stuff. But if you turn the sound off and watch that movie, those little guys that are, Christopher Walken is bouncing around in some place with them, some facility, they're sweethearts. They're high-fiving him and they're taking care of these little children and they're kind of yucking it up and stuff. And Christopher Walken's laughing. And that is very similar to the scene I experienced. And so there was another guy and he was in the background and he was this tall, wispy guy. It was like I was looking at somebody underwater, and he came forward and he had this super bright smile on his face. And he was like this wispy spinning energy. And as he moved forward, parts of him would move first, the upper part, then parts would separate and then it would all catch up. And he was coming towards me, and it was obvious that he's going to introduce himself. And as he got closer, and he, like I said, he had this huge smile. He was absolutely overjoyed to see me. And he had this huge smile. And as he came forward, as he got closer, my chest just started to expand and my throat tightened. And I felt like I was going to break down in uncontrollable crying from love. There was so much love pouring from this guy that it was paralyzing. It was absolutely overwhelming. How much we really are loved.
And who do you think he was?
Well, I've told the story a lot, and there's lots of comments. And they'll say that it's Jesus Christ, or that it's Lord Krishna, or that it's Shiva. And, they'll write to me, and every one of them I'll say, yeah, I think you're right. And I really think that humanity is trying to explain this, the way, the hierarchy, the way things are set up. And I'll be honest with you, since you're Heather, but I believe that was my higher self. That was, this higher version of us. We have this temporary human being that we all are, and our higher self has thousands of those. And then just above that, there's a soul, which is sort of organizing all our lives down here and recording all the data, all the experiences that we have. And then the higher self is, above everything and like a father. And all of us are sent here for experiences. And the higher self, our higher self, which is us, which is, it's us.
Is it, when you say the higher self, is it just you or is it us, as you've been saying? Is it lots of people make up that higher self?
I think that lots of people do make up that higher self, but they're, you're talking about soul groups and you're talking about bloodlines and, you know what I mean? Ancestors.
Okay.
And this is how I think it works. And I heard one lady say, and I've really thought about this. She said that when you look at your soul group and your ancestors and your family, um, that really way down the line, someplace we can't understand, we're all part of the same being. And I think that that's what, that we're starting to scratch the surface of understanding a higher self, a God, from our perspective. And yeah, I think people are, we've tried to explain this relationship throughout the years and throughout the millennium. And we've come up with these, the Holy Spirit, the Lord, and Jesus Christ, and the id, the ego, the superego, the higher self, the physical self, the soul. It just goes on and on. We're doing our best to explain this astonishing relationship we have with the divine. How's that work?
That makes sense. I get it. And
Okay.
explain this room more, because this is a little bit different than what most people experience.
Yeah, it was a place that had, like I said, it had beds and it had equipment, and it was indirect lighting. It was actually some kind of a place. Prior to that, I was flying through this star-filled realm, and then I was at this other place, this this in-between place. And this is another big explanation is, we all know, we all hear there's a heaven, and there's an earth, and there's an in-between place, and then there's another place. There's a place we don't want to go. And, I think people have been sending me stuff on the comment section and stuff. And I think that was like a round trip tour. And, 30 years later, I'm supposed to talk about it because, there's a lot of confusion going on. And, just like you starting this podcast, people are being tapped on the shoulder and then said, okay, it's time for you to step forward and do this thing,
Right.
I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. They're all around us, and we are being directed, guided, nudged all the time, and just to see what we do. Will we choose a higher vibrational path, or will we be selfish and willful and human?
Right. We fall into that a lot, don't we?
Yeah. It's a really incredible challenge.
Yes.
It really is a gift,
Mm-hmm. We have to keep challenging ourselves all the time just to do a little better.
Yeah.
When you were with these beings, you did have some interaction. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So the little guys were bouncing around and giggling, and the big, the tall wispy guy, he came forward, and like I said, it was overwhelming. You just, and we all have these things when, we have our kids the first day of kindergarten or something, and you see how they interact with others, and, you just want to break out in tears, and from love. And so you times that by, 1,000. And this is what I felt just by being in the presence of, this being. And, I was, from what I'd seen so far, this heavenly realm of flying through these stars. And then all of a sudden it was at this in-between place. It's like you can really understand where this alien abduction thing comes from. Because I think the souls, I think when we sleep at night, our souls go back to these places, and we get, healings and upgrades and even downgrades.
I could use some upgrades. I'll sign up for that.
And they supercharge us, and maybe they change our mind about something. And, they keep us on script. And, so that's what I think this alien abduction thing is people are waking up and they're like me, they're remembering.
So it's more of a spiritual thing.
That is, it's totally it's a spiritual thing. They love you. Those little guys, they look a little strange, and you can be afraid if you want to choose to be afraid, but they don't do anything. If you watch that movie, they don't do anything fearful. Other movies, they've got monsters and everyone's after us and everything, but they aren't.
And just a side note, I have to say, I know you're a good person because I hear that cat in the background. I'm a cat person, so.
Yeah, that's Panther.
Say hi to Panther.
So I'm sorry, we could go in so many directions, and my mind just starts pulling up, bubbles of information. So I get off. I'm getting old too, so I apologize.
No, it's all very fascinating, and I love that we can go in different directions, and that you don't just have a set script. It's very interesting to talk to you. When you were with these beings and you were in this facility, a lot of people describe it as home. Would you describe that feeling when you were in these realms as home?
Yeah, when I was in that star-filled realm, this ecstatic bliss was just unending. It was just, that's who you are, and that is our home. It was absolutely home. And then, the facility, I was still stoked, to be in their presence, and I was still buzzing, but it wasn't like, flying with those stars and those orbs. That place, everything was possible in that realm. You just knew that everything was possible. It was infinite, and you belonged
in the star-filled realm. When you were with the stars,
yeah, and you were infinite, and you were immortal, and you just knew that. And then, when I dropped into this facility type thing, I think I really do think this is the world of the soul, and it's more of a clinical thing going on with this, this Earth mission. And so at one point I was, with these guys, and it wasn't very organized. The big guy was just chuckling a lot every time I said something. It's just chuckle. It's just joyful existence, playful, joyful, sweet, kind. That's all I saw. And so yeah, I was like this little. It's like he was a father, and I was like this toddler. And he just loved me unconditionally. And I would, make suggestions and stuff, and he would just chuckle. I could feel his laugh inside of me. It was the sweetest laugh. And at one point, I was, things weren't really going. Nothing was organized. Things weren't really going anywhere. And I wanted to, I even told him. I said, "Well, I'm not going back there. I'm not going back to Bill. No way. No chance of that ever happening. So you guys want to get on with it? You want to get on with the review of my life?" And the tall, wispy guy, he just cracked up. He thought that was the funniest thing, that this little toddler thinks he's going to take over. And he just started chuckling, and he said, sure, let's do that. How do you want to start? And I started telling some stories. I told a story about, I started going through what I believed was a review of your life. And I didn't have any big regrets at all. But one thing I said was, I was offered this job on an island when my wife and I were coming out of college, and it was with the Park Service. And this island was way off the coast. You had to fly with the National Guard out, and they'd leave us there for some weeks, and we would count foxes, and we'd stay on this island by ourselves, and super remote, nobody else on it. And my wife just wanted that. She loved the idea. But I still wanted the excitement and be with the guys. So I took another fire job, and I kind of wish I'd done that for her because, she wanted it. But other than that, I didn't have any regrets. I told a few other stories. And then he stepped forward, the big, tall, wispy guy, and he said, all right, that's enough. Time to go back. And that just shocked me. I was like, dude, go back? Are you kidding me? I was like floored. I said, I am not going back there. There's no way. And he goes, yeah, you got to go back. It's you got things to do and they're important. And the three little guys, it was like they were reassigned. They just like disappeared off to some other job in the facility or something. And he stepped forward, and I begged and pleaded just like everybody does. And I told him all kinds of things. I said, the only people that are going to really, really be hurt by my demise is my wife and my parents. But they'll get over it. They're strong people.
I'm sure they loved to hear that when you got back.
My wife, my wife brought that up 20 years later.
I'm sure.
When this whole NDE thing, I started talking about it and stuff. And she said, you didn't want to come back. And I'm like, yeah, so what? And she's like, well, it doesn't feel very good. I'm like, 20 years later. But anyway, everyone will understand. We all understand when we leave, because, we all exist in this higher version of us exists on the other side. We have our other lives, and our consciousness, our focus is just directed through these avatars, these humans that we're having fun with, having these challenges with. It's like we're all watching a play, we're in the audience watching a play, and all the characters are moving around, and we're going through these incredible adventures, these tsunamis of drama in our lives and stuff like that. And it's all very entertaining.
Sometimes it's less than entertaining.
Yeah. It's entertaining on the other side.
Right. Okay.
I mean, even these horrendous things with wars and stuff like that, it's really hard to believe, but yeah, nobody ever dies. There's no permanent damage done to anybody. We just peel out and we go home.
And I want to talk about all this. I know you kind of got kicked out of that area. You went also to a very dark area, and I want to cover all of that, but let's take that into part 2.
Okay, cool.
Thanks so much for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. That was part 1. Make sure to listen to part 2. And if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe for more episodes.